should I leave my marriage, especially? It was all consuming, Linda, to the point where I was constantly feeling like in the pit of my stomach, this gnawing feeling. But also I remember just such intense levels of anxiety that confused me. So is confusion sometimes part of that whole body's response, or is it more of a mental response?
I think it's a combination. I think the part of us that gets confused is protecting us from facing some of the feelings we don't want to feel. So it's easier to feel conflicted and indecisive than it is to really get in touch with the sadness underneath even the question that's coming up. Because if you're asking whether you should stay or go, there's a deep unhappiness. There's something that's in the way of being satisfied. And instead of going to those feelings, we stay in our heads and get confused. But the confusion stops when you pay attention to yourself with the self-love. So how do you integrate the self-love in that, Marcy?
First off, great question. Okay. And I really appreciate it, because this was really, I think, Linda, the beginning of my true self-love journey. And so I was in that place. Honestly, there were some times, and I can feel the emotion of it, I had this sense of dread, even because I had no idea who I was going to be once I left that marriage. And it had defined me for almost 30 years, right? And so I remember being in this place, and the reason I brought up confusion before is because, Linda, there were times I actually felt like it was in a fog. And I remember on more than one occasion asking my therapist, who I worked with very closely during that time. I needed her support in ways I could have never imagined. But also my very best friend, who stood by me through thick and thin. And do you know, there were times where I would have to ask them, wait, why am I doing this again? Like, I actually lost touch with why this was so important for me. And I noticed that happened when I started to get consumed by guilt and shame, that I was feeling ungrateful for what I had been given. I had been living such an idyllic life, right? I had been married to my husband for, oh my goodness, 26 years, 27 years, and we had been together a couple of years before that. My life, I had everything and anything that anybody could want materially. We were looked upon as like pillars of our community. I mean, people actually came to us for marital advice at times. And I remember just being so consumed with that guilt and that shame, and feeling like this is not a decision that I can make. And I remember going back to that place over and over and over again, because I was in such a state of confusion. But I think what happened in just asking for number one, for the support, right, of my therapist, who I actually went to with the intention to help me to leave my marriage, and also reaching out to my friend and allowing myself to be so vulnerable and saying, I need you. I need you to help to leave me. Now, I know that you have worked with lots of people working through these very same issues. Have you had others who have described those feelings?
I think that's kind of the universal feeling that you're mentioning, the feeling that you can pretend for just so long to be happy, but you have so many resentments and frustrations and outdated beliefs and old stories that you get to a point where you don't want to pretend anymore. And I know that's what happened to me as a lifelong codependent, being pleasing, making lemonade where there were lemons, looking at the positive. After a 20-year marriage, it wasn't supposed to be ending. So I did everything to pretzel myself into making it better before I decided I need to love myself enough to see what I really wanted and needed, and learning how to ask for it. So what
ask you a question.
Sure.
Because I think, so what just popped up for me is I know that I was accused of this, and that is how do we discern between being selfish and making a decision where we know it's going to affect other people's lives, and recognizing that we are doing this because it is mandatory for us in order to sort of realign ourselves with our own truth.
My answer to that is there is a way to peacefully and respectfully restructure your family. And if you look at it as a family restructuring that you can do with compassion, both for what you're feeling and for what your partner's feeling and what your children are feeling and what your parents are feeling, but ultimately use your own barometer of what you truly want and need, knowing that you deserve to have your needs met, that you could ask for them in a respectful way, that you can be willing to receive them and you can be grateful, but you reach a point where you understand that your boundaries have been questioned or challenged or violated. And for your own care and self-esteem and self-worth and future, you have to set appropriate boundaries. And that may mean sometimes that you have to leave. And it also may mean that when you finally have the courage to set the boundaries and share your truth and talk about the possibility of leaving, then what happens is you get your partner's attention, and they can finally, if they're going to at all, they can finally decide that they have to make some changes in order to keep the relationship going or to create a new relationship together. Is that your experience, Marcy?
Well, yes, absolutely. And, I think that moment is a really important moment for each and every one of us. When we come to that place where we are willing to love ourselves enough to ask those tough questions and accept the answer.
Yes. And if there's an answer that isn't meeting your needs, there can be a compassionate divorce. There can be a parting that honors who you both are and what you've both shared, and if you have children, the children that you've created, but to do it in a way that allows for a new beginning instead of breaking a family. I always like to say that families need not be broken, but can be peacefully and respectfully restructured.
Now, I have a very important question to ask you. Do you think that is possible if only one of the members of that partnership is willing to go in that direction, or do you think it takes two?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. In all the work that I did as a therapist and a mediator and an attorney, and in going through my own divorce after 20 years, I came up with the process of compassionate mediation, because if even one person brings more self-energy, brings more of that compassionate, calm energy of self, your higher self, your best self, then no matter what your partner does, you can still maintain more calm in the middle of the storm. So even one person, and it doesn't matter where you are in your relationship, if you have not ever talked about leaving, but you've thought about it, if you think you want a separation, if you're in the middle of a separation, if you're in a divorce, and even past a divorce. Because when people get together after a divorce, there's usually that energy between them that feels like shrapnel to their children. But if even one person is coming from an open heart, or from forgiveness, or from calm understanding,
Laura Robinson,
then what that does is give you a chance to create a whole new relationship, no matter what your partner chooses to do. What do you think?
So, yeah, I'm so happy to hear that, and I'm feeling so hopeful, even knowing that you're doing that kind of work. And because I think a lot of times, people just sort of give up. They think, well, you know what? I'm sick and tired of carrying all of this on my own, and seeing the other person as unwilling to move in that compassionate way. What you just said is that if one person is willing, that it actually creates an energy of hope. And it also creates an opportunity for that person to almost like giving themselves permission to have a completely different experience than what they think they can have.
Absolutely. And that experience can be one of healing. People can actually heal, even long after the fact.
And that's something actually I have mentioned on a number of occasions, how grateful I was that I had the foresight to find my therapist who actually specialized in women going through transitions, and reached for that support, and also had the tenacity to stay with it. Because like I said, there were plenty of times where I forgot why I was doing it, and I was ready to throw the towel in and just say, forget it, this is too hard, it hurts too much, I'm hurting too many people. And I remember saying, at the end, how grateful I was that I stuck with that rather than, being spit out of the whale's mouth, right?
Right.
I actually stepped out, and I was healthier than I had ever been before.
And not only are you healthier, but your children are healthier. Because if you have children, you certainly don't want them to suffer. And even if you are quiet in your suffering, energetically, children pick up the energy in the household. So whether you're overtly fighting, or whether you're withholding, or whether you're depressed, whatever you're feeling, your children are feeling it too. So creating more peace and harmony is why I wrote the book on compassionate mediation, because it helps people add passion to their marriage or compassion to their divorce. And it's the same process. It's all about coming from your best self and bringing that best self into your relationship. And I'm offering a training tonight live in the Compassionate Communication community, which I'd like to invite everybody to join me, because in that we're going to be talking about how to decide whether you should stay or go. And if you're a professional, how to help your clients decide how to stay or go. Because it's not about giving them the answer. It's not about having a pro and con sheet and you tally it up. It's how do you help your clients work through the parts of them that are confused and reactive and resistant and hurt and angry and sad and scared. Deep breath. How do you help them do that in a way that they can come from their highest self and then make the decision that they need to make?
And continue on then to create healthier lives in every dimension.
Right. And they forgive themselves. They can practice the miracle of empathy. They can be kind to the inner child in each of them. And they truly can begin to create a relationship that meets both of their needs. And it's almost like becoming the butterfly out of the chrysalis and becoming the best of who you are and bringing that back to your relationship. Because once you bring your best self back to your relationship, where you fill up like Sark says, a full cup of love, sharing your overflow with the world. And I invite you to get my Compassionate Communication Care Kit that will allow you to find a way to get to your best self, create a better relationship, Use the Compassionate Mediation Roadmap to make changes in your relationship now. And also to go get Marcy's gift of Love is in the Air. That's at www.heartshiftcoach.com. And we both want to give you our gifts so that you can bring your best self to the discussion of, do I want to stay or do I want to go? So whether it's a marriage, a friendship, a job, a relationship, invite yourself to love yourself enough to figure out what it is you truly want, and then learn how to share what you want and need compassionately with your partner, and invite them to do the same with you. And once you do that with compassionate communication, self-love, and compassionate mediation, miracles can happen, and you actually can create something new and better together. So thanks for joining Marcy and me. We look forward to seeing you in the future in Clubhouse, on Facebook, and anywhere else our paths cross. Bye for now.